Everything on earth, all life on this earth, has a desire to live. And as stewards of this earth, it's good to see ourselves as representatives of supporting enhanced, better improved conditions for all animals and all life on this earth, whether the smallest insect or our fellow friends and humans on this planet. The Buddhist tradition has taught me so much in ways that I could not have comprehended before, of ways that we can be stewards. Now, many of us are naturally caring people, and if we see an animal or another person hurting, it's our instinct to go and be there for them and to act as protectors and caregivers. But sometimes we don't think about the ordinary things in life, like how to support the smallest beings on this planet, the insects, the butterflies, moths, beetles. We often want nature all to ourselves. We're not quite as interested in sharing when it's a mosquito who's nipping at our ankles, or a wasp is buzzing around our head, bugging our ears. There's a reason why we use the word "that person bugs us." Bugs can be very annoying. But for this practice and what I'm learning in the Buddhist tradition is that there are different ways that I can become a steward. In the smallest of ways, it doesn't have to be a grand event. And one of the ways that I've decided is to ask people to donate to the FPMT, who has a special category for animals that are needing support and liberation from suffering, prayers for liberation. And so all of the work that I'm doing for bees and pollinators, such as this video will be exclusively discussing, I just ask that people make a donation as I'm volunteering my time and my effort. And especially now for a dear teacher in the Mahayana Tradition, Geshe Tenli, who's undergoing recovery and recuperation from an accident. And we are sending great prayers and asking that the wisdom of all the helpers come and be with Geshe as I create this video, which is informative and instructive about why plant pollinator gardens and what are they. So typically, I was trained first as an ecologist in my bachelor studies at Colorado State University, and then I returned to the workforce as a landscape professional. And there was such a disparity I noticed between what I learned in the world of ecology and scientific data analysis and systems approaches to what has become really a very serious issue around pollinators, especially bees. Bee populations declining rapidly, monarch butterfly populations declining, many other types of unknown species to many of you and myself, of animals that are insects that rely on native plants, that is, plants that are grown, that are indigenous to an area. So these plants typically are not favorable in a garden environment, but are highly favorable to bees, butterflies, native insects like wasps, carpenter bees, bumblebees, beetles, and other insects, ants and flies are pollinators as well. So when we look at a beautifully manicured landscape, and this is a lovely hosta, and I'm at actually a very sacred little um, labyrinth this morning. Just seems very appropriate for honoring life in light of this. So this is just a small memorial garden that I've come to give this very short instructional video on what is a pollinator garden. So many of the plants that I would choose for a traditional landscape, that is where there are no weeds, few insects, lots of green with pops of color, and maybe some element that is ornamental, that has um, strategically planted in the landscape to give that exclamation point, they call it in the world of landscaping. But so many of these plants are not conducive to supporting insects and pollinators. And again, I just ask, and I'll put a link below to the FPMT, that this video is helpful to you, but then my hope is that you will make just some small donation to that organization to help free animals from suffering, the liberation of animals from suffering. So this is traditional landscaping. Spiderwort is the purple plant off to the right. We all recognize geranium, variegated hosta, two different forms of hydrangea, some annuals that are planted beautifully at the headstones for lives that have passed before this time. And then, of course, these grand, I'm just going to go up to this excellent canopy of this tall growth forest. Incredibly beautiful. And all of this is a system, an energetic system. We live basically about 6 feet above ground. Also, you guys, I'm going to take a pause and read this out loud. This is for my dear teacher, Geshe Tenley, which he shared with us many times. Sometimes you have to let go of what you were expecting your life to be and find the joy in the life you are actually living. So true. So true. So our thoughts and prayers continue to be with Geshe today. So I'm going to walk across the street here to another garden, which begins this hybrid journey of plants that are part native and part horticultural varieties. Now, the horticultural varieties are genetically altered in green, laboratory or greenhouse, under greenhouse conditions to give consumers longer flowering of their plants, bigger blooms, lots of variation in blossoms. For instance, surprisingly, the color blue is very difficult to find for gardens other than just a few handful of species, but to reiterate that a lot of those plants do not provide food that pollinators need. Even hummingbirds, or I'm going to repeat that monarch butterfly populations have reduced dramatically, 60% over the last 5 or 10 years. There's a huge concern, and they are animals that thrive on certain types of flowers only, the milkweed. And then there's other butterflies such as the swallowtail that really love fennel and dill. And if you've ever planted fennel and dill in your gardens, you know that sometimes these striped caterpillars will show up and devour the leaves and leave only the stems. It can be hard to give up or to share our gardens with pollinators sometimes, especially when they're in that caterpillar form. So even as I'm talking, you can see that there are some native bees that are working on this coreopsis, and even having some territorial fights over whose flower this is. Hey, that's my flower. And very active, bees at work. So that's my volunteer organization. It's called Bees at Work, and I'm working with corporations. And if you are watching this and you know somebody who has a large median area in a parking lot or a back area that's underutilized that would like to have gardens put in that attract butterflies, they can be part of the Bees at Work network. And all I ask is just donations for plant materials, and I provide all the labor. So these are daylilies, beautiful, beautiful. But not that great for pollinators, but absolutely stunning to look at. And so if you look, you will see that there's not much insect activity going on in those big, bold, beautiful blossoms. But if you look down here, this is lamb's ear, and there are some very small and tiny insects that are working on those blossoms. Again, we're here at the coreopsis. Again, the geranium in the back, very beautiful. Not that great for pollinators. There's just not much food. So they might land on those flowers, but they don't have the identifying characteristics that would draw in a pollinator for feeding, whereas this catnip, you can see that we're getting ready for the 4th of July here in a public park, so I am not responsible for the flags. Sedum is a lovely, lovely plant. I would replace that with, there's a thyme. It's actually the herbaceous thyme that you would put in your spice cabinet that grows as a ground cover, but also has an incredibly beautiful purple blossom year-round. I mean, in the south, it's year-round. Up here in New England, it's 3 months during the year that actually you would see blossoms. So now we're going to move around to one more garden, which actually is tilted more in favor of some perennial aspects. And also, I want to make a note that some people are nervous about planting some pollinators plants because they can quote unquote look messy. One of the advantages of doing this hybrid planting, what I call hybrid planting, is the combination of horticultural varieties with more native species. This is called moonbeam coreopsis. You can see there's lots of different insects that are doing a lot of work. You can even see pollen collecting on that bee's legs. Look at that. Look at all the pollen they're collecting. Isn't that amazing? They're so busy. Gesla would be very proud. They're collecting merit. Beautiful. Really very beautiful to see all that at work. So we're going to just go across to this next garden where, again, this mixture, it doesn't have to be messy. It can look absolutely beautiful, and so much of it is about maintenance and making these choices to plant in large groupings. And even when I was studying and doing research on native prairie systems, often there was a matrix of plants that would come in phases into bloom that were precisely timed with the need of the insects over that have evolved together, these partnerships over tens of thousands of years. This evolution has occurred. So some of these plants are similar to what we're just right across the street. So now I'm seeing bee balm and more coreopsis. There's also a daisy, and you can see that bumblebee in the penstemon. Look at how amazing that is, that flower has adapted along with the bumblebee. And again, you can see how they carry the pollen on their legs. Incredible, incredible. And this time of year, I am not a threat to any of these bees as long as I just sort of observe and kind of watch. It's very beautiful. And this is a little bit messier than the garden that we were seeing across the street. This is a brown-eyed Susan, very upright, tall flower with a flat. Whereas the penstemon have more of a tubular flower. This brown-eyed Susan has more of a disc or a plate or saucer-like flower. And again, there's so many different types of pollinators. So we're considering, let me see if I can get that in my camera for you. Let's see if it'll focus on that. There we go. So, the wind is really going to make that hard to see. Sorry. So yeah, ants, bees, wasps, moths, beetles, flies are very busy this morning gathering food. So my hope with this video is that not only is it informative and instructive, but also with the Bees at Work campaign, that people begin to really look around their properties, even large commercial properties where there's great potential in medians or in back areas where maybe it's okay to have a little bit of a messier look. But something to be proud of is to have a Bees at Work sign, which I have, which is it looks like a construction sign with a little bee in the middle. And it actually has the words Bees at Work. And then there's a hashtag. Some companies that do agree to sign up. Also, I've partnered with a group in New Hampshire called Pollinator Pathways, and they are working through free classes that are taught in the libraries and other conservation groups throughout New Hampshire. Pollinator Pathways, you can look them up online. They have a lot of resources available. And I guess I'll just end this video with one beautiful lavender. And this combination planting of petunias, which again are just beautiful for color. They don't really provide any substance for the bees, but because of this hybrid model or this connected planting, the bees are going to utilize the lavender, the bee balm, the yarrow. I see some yarrow. It looks like it's suffering a little down here, and other natives, while allowing some of those perennials to do their work. The annuals are providing that big, bold color. And there's also, just FYI, I won't go into it today, but just also native grasses that are used by pollinators as well for nesting, laying eggs, etc. And then there's also shrubs and of course small trees. As we know, fruit trees need to be pollinated in order for us to have our food. There's a big industry around moving bees around the country in bee boxes. Huge industry. That's where they think some of the disease that's causing the die-off of the colonies started was just from an over-industrialization and stress related to those boxes. But that's for another day and another topic. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please share. And if you did enjoy the video, just one more time ask that you just make a small donation to the FPMT, to their Animal Liberation Fund. And especially this video, my heart goes out to Geshler Tenley, and hoping that his recovery and his full recovery proceeds quickly so he can return to us soon.